All right, these are my three panoramic principles that you need to understand how geometry affects panoramic radiographs. In the previous video, I already talked about the focal trough, so go watch that one if you hadn't already. And this one, I'll cover lingual objects and ghost images. So this is the second principle to understand, lingual objects in panoramic images. And this one's pretty straightforward, but the X-ray beam comes from the inferior. So it's coming from behind where you're imaging, behind the head, or from the side. It's coming from the other side, but it's also coming from the inferior. What that means is an object that lies lingual to other objects is going to be projected superior to those objects. And this shows an example. So this is a cross-sectional image of a mandible, and you can imagine three different positions or potential positions of the mandibular canal. It could be more toward the lingual, as is shown in this orange dot, or right in the center, or more toward the buccal. And what this is showing is that since the X-ray beam comes from the inferior, it's projecting superiorly. So imagine this being projected onto the image, onto the panoramic image. If the object lies more toward the lingual, it's going to be projected more superior. If it lies more toward the buccal, it's going to be projected more inferior. Now, I've used this rule to identify where things are in panoramic images. Even though it's not a 3D model, if you combine this with the first rule I already discussed, which talks about the focal trough, and things that lie toward the lingual are magnified more horizontally, you can start to identify where things are spatially in panoramic images, just understanding the principles of geometry. And so this is our third principle. Understanding ghost images in panoramic imaging can be a little complex, but as long as you understand the principles, you can typically figure out where things are coming from and why you have ghost images. And so let's talk about, first of all, what's a real image, and that's something that lies between the center of rotation and the receptor. And then we'll talk about double images and ghost images. So in this image here, the top row is just showing the process of acquiring a panoramic image. So we have a top-down view of a patient, and this is the start of the image. The X-ray source is out in front to the right of the patient, and the sensor is behind the patient to the left. And so we start imaging on the left side. One of the first things that you're going to see is the mandibular condyle on the left side, and it starts to rotate around. In the previous video, I talked about this moving point of rotation. And so here it is halfway through the image, exactly halfway through a panoramic image. You should be coming from the back. The X-rays come from the back and they project anteriorly, and it's imaging the anterior teeth. And then it continues on in this direction. So the X-ray source is going around the patient clockwise, as is the sensor. They're rotating together in sync. And so this is as it's finishing up, and that point of rotation is then moving down here to the patient's left side. So what does that mean? Let's talk about real images, double images, ghost images. The image labeled D here is showing where you get real images. So the definition of a real image is being between the point of rotation and the sensor. And so anything right here, when you're imaging this side of the patient, is a real image, as you would expect. The left mandibular condyle is a real image. That means you actually get a real image of the hyoid bone here. And in some cases, you get a real image, a projection of the spine on the left side. As it's rotating around, what was real image is between the point of rotation and the sensor. And so you get your real image of the anterior teeth here as it's starting to rotate from this point to this point. So you get your canines, you get your incisors. This is just everything in mirror image from how it started. Now it's finishing up, it's imaging the left side. So anything between this point of rotation, or here's the point of rotation here, and the sensor is giving you a real image. So again, a real image of the right mandibular condyle now. But what are we seeing here? We're seeing the hyoid bone again, the cervical spine again. Yeah, you get two real images of some of these structures if they're somewhere in this image, and that's what's labeled here in the green, image E. That's where you get a double image. So you get a double image of the hyoid bone, you get a double image of the spine. And so lastly, let's talk about ghost images. So if I said real images were between the point of rotation and the sensor, a ghost image is just the opposite. So as you're starting the image, as you're imaging the left side here, you're actually projecting through the right condyle, and that's what's creating a ghost image. It's going to be flipped horizontally, it's going to be a bit blurred, and we'll show you what that looks like in panoramic radiographs. But this in orange depicts any part of the image that projects a ghost image. And so where do we get a ghost image of the spine of the hyoid bone? That's when it's between the source of the X-ray source and the point of rotation. So right here, as you're going through the center or the midline of the patient and you're getting a real image of the anterior teeth, you're getting a ghost image of the spine and the hyoid bone. So the spine and hyoid bones, things in this area, specifically in this triangle, you're going to get two double images, but you're also going to get a ghost image. And the hyoid bone ghost image, the spine ghost image, they're really blurred, so it's tough to really depict, but you just see more of a blurry radiopacity through the midline of the image from the spine. All right, I want you to think for yourself for a second here and consider this question. Which areas create ghost images? Here's that image of the orange area showing where ghost images are as a cheat. And so, are you going to see a ghost image of the mandibular ramus? Yes, the right mandibular ramus causes a ghost image when it's starting to form the left side of the patient. The anterior mandible, does that create a ghost image? No, it's never here posterior or between the point of rotation and the source. So the anterior mandible, no. The spine, does that create a ghost image? Yes, when it's imaging from behind, when it's imaging the anterior teeth, that's when you get the ghost image of the spine. So A and C are correct here. Where would a tooth have to be in order to create a ghost image? So it has to lie within this orange structure to be between the point of rotation and the source. That means in most cases you're not going to see ghost image of teeth unless there's some rotation, maybe some misplacement of the head where they're too far to the right or left, or if you have a tooth that's very far back, and specifically if it's lingually oriented, that's going to cause it to be more likely to be in the area where you get a ghost image. So lingual and posterior is the answer for that one. And you'll see examples of ghost images of teeth in some cases. Usually it's impacted third molars because they're so far back here, they may be in this area where it's creating a ghost image. All right, I found these images, if not a little macabre, very useful for teaching what ghost images are. So this is a sectioned cadaver head where it's sectioned down the sagittal plane, right in the mid-sagittal plane. So you can see where you have real images, and then on the other side, you don't have any real object. So we know all of these are ghost images. And what that means, here they have labeled what you're seeing here. You see the real image of the orbit. My favorite structure here, the zygomatic process of the maxilla. And you get this, only the right half of the mandible. And so what are the ghost images we're seeing here? Well, this is the ghost image of the tongue from that side. Here's the real image of the tongue. And you get a ghost image of the hard palate. One thing that hopefully will make it easy to remember which one is the ghost and which is the real image, ghosts float, right? Ooh. So the ghost image on the side that you see here, the white arrows point to the ghost image of the opposing side of the hard palate line. And so the black arrows are indicating the real image of which side. So if it's a real image, it's on the side that you're imaging. So this is the real image of the right side. The white arrows indicate the ghost image of the left side. And so that's it for lingual objects and ghost images. I hope that helps you recognize what you're seeing in panoramic radiographs. Hopefully if I have time, I'll make another video where I show examples of this and show how at first you might not want to know what you're looking at in a panoramic image, but if you understand these three principles of panoramic geometry, this can help you decipher what you're seeing in panoramic radiographs. I don't think you should ever look at a radiograph and see something and not know what it is. As a radiologist, that's something that bothers me, it haunts me. If I see a line, if I see something that looks like a ghost image but I'm not sure, I've just got this obsession where I have to figure out what's causing it. And it does take time with panoramic imaging to really understand what's going on. But you do need to recognize anatomy, so next we'll talk about different parts of anatomy that you need to understand and label and identify on any panoramic radiograph.